Hi everyone. Aditi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So hello everyone. Welcome to DSC CCOW's speaker series. The speaker for our first session is Michelle. Michelle is currently a final year computer engineering student at our college. She was a summer research intern at IIT Patna in 2019, where she worked on dimensionality reduction and co-authored three papers which were later published in international conference and journals. In 2020, she worked as a summer research intern in IIT Bombay on static analysis, point-to-point analysis. Her BTech project is a research project sponsored by IIT Bombay in the domain of programming languages and compilers. She will carry on doing research after her BTech during grad school. Over to you, Michelle. Best of luck.
Thank you, Radhika. I'll be talking about pursuing undergraduate research, and particularly as a student from a disconnected program. So, disconnected programs are generally programs that I would classify as, not having a lot of support for students doing research. Next slide. Right. So, just a few disclaimers to keep in mind when listening to this talk. Firstly, I'm someone who has, tried to pursue research these past few years, and I have relatively succeeded. Hopefully, I have failed enough to give you a rounded view of what it means to pursue research as an undergrad in a college like ours. But it is still a good idea to seek out more perspectives, like people who have tried to tried to pursue research, but for whom it hasn't worked out as well and stuff like that. Next slide. And everything that I know is a reflection of my 3 years pursuing research so far. Not only would it be useful to seek out more experienced perspectives, but also, talk to other people who've been doing this. This is also a general discussion about undergraduate research, so I'm not going to go into the specifics of the research that I have done. And I will discuss privilege wherever relevant, particularly at the end of the talk, and I'll aim to be as transparent as possible. Next slide. So the purpose of this talk is mainly to introduce you to research, and then if you think it's something that you want to try and pursue, I'll tell you how to apply for research internships, what to do in them, etc. I'll also try to share my experience a bit. There weren't a lot of seniors who publicly talked about research to me, and I wish there had been. And a part of that also bleeds into the third point, that I hope that you will carry this forward and continue to talk to your juniors about research and about research internships. Next slide. Yes, so as Radhika very pointed out really well at the start, I have some amount of research background. So I spent 2 summers at IIT Patna and then at IIT Bombay doing research in 2 different domains. The first one was in machine learning, and the other one is in static analysis, points to analysis, which is sort of at the bridge between programming languages and compilers. My final year project is also sponsored by IIT Bombay, so that is also in programming languages. And I will be starting my PhD in programming languages in fall 2021. So I am going to continue doing research beyond BTech as well. Next slide. So a brief outline of the talk. We'll start off with a short discussion of what research is and address some common misconceptions that students have usually when I'm talking to them about research. Then we'll talk a lot about research internships and applying for them, and then very briefly go over my experiences. Next slide. So first, what is research? Next. So mainly I'm going to redirect you to different talks in this slide. In the comment section of this Google Meet, I've pasted the slides of the talk as a link. So if you go there, you'll be able to click on this on these links that are highlighted in blue as well. So essentially, the question of what research is really, really hard, and it can take hours to answer. And people with a lot more experience can answer it much better than I can. So. But I would point you to 2 specific talks. The first one is What is Research by Dr. Thalakottur, and Professor Khetkar will be giving a talk in Cummins as well on the 23rd. about higher education. And he's a brilliant speaker. He's a great advisor. Please go listen to that talk and listen to this talk as well. And then the second one is You and Your Research by a very famous scientist called Richard Hamming. And, personally, it is learning and original thinking and innovation at its very purest. So you're only dealing with ideas when you talk about research. Next slide. And one question that always comes up when students talk to me about research is, why should I consider research? And the biggest point really is it going to be useful in campus placements? And the answer to that is sure, it can be useful in campus placements, mainly because the ability to do research shows an ability to think new concepts and reason about them deeply, apply them, and even present your work. This is something that's very valuable. And this is also something that you can talk about in your interview. But ultimately, it's not going to get you a software engineering job. So don't go into a research internship thinking that this will get me a job at Google, etc. It will be interesting to talk about during your interview with Google, but it's ultimately not going to get you the software engineering job. Next slide. The other big thing about why you should consider research is that master's and PhD programs, but in general, higher education values research experience. PhD programs are essentially research programs. So obviously, they're going to value it more than master's programs, but even incredibly competitive master's programs value it a lot. And don't just take my word for it. You should go and look at profiles of students in PhD and master's programs for yourself to see the kind of research experience that they have. Next slide. And personally, it's also really, really fun. It's intellectually stimulating, it's enriching. And if you're like really, really curious and like delving into concepts really deeply, it might be something that you end up doing. And you might end up, making a career out of it, like I hope to do. Next slide. So I've been talking to students for about, I think, 2 years now about research and, trying to talk more about undergraduate research. And I often come across a few common misconceptions. So I'm going to address that right off the bat before anybody asks me. And the first one is this idea that students have that, I need to be really smart to do research, and I'm not really that smart, so how can I do research? And next slide. I would say that it doesn't really matter if you're smart. No one cares if you're smart or not. And it's really not something that's going to be a deciding factor on how well you do research. You do need to be driven, excited, and committed. That will help you gain the skills to, do well in your work. So don't worry about whether you think you're smart enough. Let other people decide that. Just worry about the sort of work you're doing, how excited you are, and how committed you are to the kind of work you're doing. Next slide. Additionally, a lot of students think that they will probably need to know what field they want to work in for the rest of their lives from the get-go, and that they don't know a lot about computer science. They don't even know how many fields there are in computer science, and how are they supposed to choose? Next slide. And the answer to that is that a lot of people change fields. And I'll talk more about this later, but really as a student, you shouldn't be concerned about whether this field that you're going to work in is going to be something that you work in for the rest of your life. It's probably not going to be for anyone. So don't worry about that and just focus on exploring. And a lot of research is also pretty multidisciplinary, and skills that you learn are transferable. So this is really not something you need to worry about. Next slide. The third and final misconception that some students will tell me outright, but then others will sort of like keep in the back of their minds, is that I need to be from an IIT to do smart things like research. Only Einstein has done research, so I can't do things like research. I'm just a common student. I should just focus on getting good grades, and then hopefully I'll get a good campus placement, and then that'll be good. All I have to say to this is, next slide, You are what you tell yourself. So don't hold yourself back. You can give research a shot and then decide whether you can or cannot do it, or whether you even like it. Don't hold yourself back by telling things like, oh, what I did in the past in one exam dictates what the rest of my life is going to look like. So don't worry about it. And hopefully, this has changed your mind a bit, and then you think that, okay, maybe you can actually pursue research. Next slide. So another common question that I get is that, can I do independent research when I don't have an advisor advising me? And I understand where this comes from, because, it's hard to find professors to help you with the work you do. And most of the students who ask this also think that the way researchers write papers is that you choose an algorithm, you get some result, you cite a few papers, and then that's it. You have a paper and you can get published almost immediately. You know of somebody who got that paper published in a week, and you think it's great. You may get published quickly, but you do have to keep in mind that this is not how good quality research works. Next slide. In fact, the main reason why you should keep this in mind is because you might impress your friends who know nothing about research, but you aren't going to fool anyone worth fooling. So the people worth fooling are graduate admissions committees and, people who have actually done research, who will be able to tell the quality of the research that you do based on not only the paper that you write, but also the avenues that you're going to publish in. So if you end up publishing in places that are predatory, so predatory journals and conferences, what will end up happening is that they will publish your paper without peer review. So they're not going to give you any comments or suggestions to improve the work. Instead, they're just going to say, this is a great paper, give us some money, and then we'll publish it. This is really not in your best interest to publish in places like this. And not only is it not in your best interest, and you lose money, it's more that publishing in certain places like these can be a disqualification. So you can end up coming to these, you can end up talking to researchers who will then realize that you have published in certain avenues that they think aren't reputed enough, and that can end up being a disqualification for you. Next slide. So ultimately, there's a lot that you gain when you have a professor advising you. It can help evaluate your ideas, validate them, help you develop them. And ultimately, it's a collaboration, and the best mentors push you to do the best that you can, not just in terms of research, but in terms of writing, in terms of evaluating your ideas independently, etc. And you also see a lot of personal growth with a good mentor. It's hard to put into words how a mentor can affect your life unless you do have that sort of relationship with someone. But trust me when I say that good professors are worth their weight in gold. So instead of trying to, go at it independently, though I understand why you would do that, I think you should focus your efforts, at least at the start, to trying to find good professors to mentor you or to help you out, to do internships under them. And then you'll be able to do a lot more independent work. Next slide. So ultimately, good work takes time and it takes expertise and not luck. That expertise you're going to borrow from your professor. And research is a marathon ultimately, and not a race. And you should, focus on building skills as an undergrad that can help you in a marathon and not just in one internship. So chase opportunities to learn from fantastic people, because there is a lot that they can teach you. You have no idea the depth of knowledge that people have and that they can teach you about. So really the best answer to this is research internships. And it's a great way to try out research and to figure out if this is something you want to do more long term. Next slide. So yes, we come to the point of how do you do a research internship? Next. First, we talk about before applying for research internship. Next. So the first question is, how do you pick a domain? I would say that you should just pick a domain that you're interested in and dive right into doing research in that domain. And how do you pick a domain? Well, what you should be doing ideally in your first and second year is exploring everything and anything that seems interesting to you. So I use Coursera to explore. And the programming languages course on Coursera, which teaches you functional programming and SML, was literally life changing for me. It's what got me to switch from machine learning to programming languages, and I'm ending up doing a PhD in things that I learned about in this course. You can also try textbooks, small projects, your favorite MOOC platform. You don't need to spend money when exploring these things. So I used to audit courses on Coursera a lot. You can also use MIT OCW, Udemy, anything, YouTube tutorials, YouTube lectures. Literally anything is fine. Just spend your time exploring things that seem interesting to you. And once you find something that's interesting and you think you want to look more into, dive right in. Next slide. When exploring, you should try to focus on building up a love of learning about everything else. So don't just learn to get a certificate. Rote learning is not going to serve you here. Focus on getting your basics in that field right. And mainly, you're still in undergrad. It's better to try stuff out now and realize that it's not for you versus much later. Next slide. And a comment that I get quite frequently is that, well, if I end up working in a different field, then I would have wasted work. I would have wasted time doing work in this other field, and I don't want to waste time. And really, I don't think it's very productive to think like this, because ultimately, all good research experience is going to be useful experience. So you're going to learn a lot about the process of research, and that really is very transferable to other research areas. And I'm not just saying this because I, abstractly think that this is true. I did research in machine learning and then switched over to programming languages, and a lot of the skills that I learned while doing machine learning research was transferable to programming languages research as well, especially when you're this young as an undergrad. So undergrad is really one of the best times to explore different fields. And if you end up switching multiple times as well, your personal conviction to do research in another field will be strengthened by what you know research is like in different fields. Because research, you might end up thinking that research is just, the work that you do, or the output that you produce, but it's really a lot more. There's a lot of community around it. There's a lot of interactions and values that each of these communities have. And you really might end up liking any of them over any other. So explore your heart's desire and find something that really fits you. Next slide. And the other big question is, what should you choose? Should you choose a hot topic like machine learning or blockchain? Or should you choose something that's not so hot, like, for example, programming languages and compilers? And, both have their advantages and disadvantages. A disadvantage of hot topics is that the field moves incredibly quickly. And there's a lot of oversaturation that can happen. And additionally, you might get a fancy PI, so PI is principal investigator or advisor, who has no time for you. Not so hot topics also have certain disadvantages, like it's not particularly flashy. No one is talking about it. I don't know how many people before this talk knew that people did research in programming languages and compilers. But, it's a very active research field, but it's not being talked about in the public sphere quite a lot. And then a lot of the low-hanging fruit and, easily solved problems are all gone. So both have their advantages and disadvantages. Next slide. Ultimately, you can choose either, whether something is relatively hot or not, doesn't matter. Understand that if your interest in a field is due to how impressive it sounds when you tell other people that you work in that field, that isn't sustainable. It's not going to carry you forward maybe more than 1 or 2 years unless you build a really, genuine interest in that field. So try to evaluate why you think a field is interesting as well. Has it been sold to you? Has it been marketed to you? Or do you really just enjoy it? And go for the things that you genuinely enjoy and want to learn more about. Next slide. Yes. So now during research internships, you also have to learn how to manage your expectations from that internship. So as an undergraduate, you can't contribute until you put in a large amount of time into building domain knowledge. The more that you want, the more that you'll have to work for it, because you are going to be working with people who are PhD students, who are professors who have been working in this field for years and years. You cannot, and nobody will expect you to compete with them or do the same amount of work or the same quality of work either. So really, these are like training programs, and you're going to spend a lot of time building up domain knowledge. And only once that is done is when you'll be able to contribute. Next slide. So levels of expectations that you can have from yourself is, firstly, you can say, okay, I want, at the end of this internship, I want a certificate that says that I did this internship. You can also say, okay, above that, I want to have learned something deeply. Above that, maybe you think that, okay, I want to write a paper. Above that, a step above that can be, I want this paper to be published in a reputable journal and conference. And then much, much higher than that is, I want to do groundbreaking research. And next slide. Yes, so it's really, these are all in levels of increasing infeasibility. So as a student, you're not going to do groundbreaking research. So don't think about it like that. I suggest you go into it thinking about learning something interesting deeply and writing a paper, because publishing is, we'll talk about this later, but publishing is really something that's not entirely in your hands. Next slide. You can also have different levels of expectations from a professor. So professors can help you with resources. So this is where you learn things, etc. They can also help you with guidance and mentorship. This can be research mentorship or then just like personal mentorship as well. And then they can also give you a lot of time. Next slide. Generally, professors are incredibly busy people. So know that these levels are increasing in value. So if you find somebody who's giving you, who's making time for you, who's making time to talk to you and making sure that you understand what you're doing, that has a lot of value in it. Next slide. What you should not expect is professors to spoon feed you, give you personal lectures, and really, hold your hand throughout research. That's not going to happen. And also, if you think that is what you need during an internship, then you maybe should reconsider why you want to do research, because a lot of research is, self-driven, and you should be able to learn by yourself. Next slide. Yes. So now, how do you apply to research internships? Next slide. So when I was first thinking about how, doing research internship, I went around asking people this question a lot. And so this is past Michelle asking this question out into the void. How do I get a research internship? Next slide. The first bit of advice that I got is that you should cold email professors, because they are dying to get students involved in research. Next slide. A lot of this common advice, I think, is pretty wrong. And with my newfound knowledge, I can say that the better the institute, the more the number of students who are dying to work with professors. Very often, professors will not read, much less respond to your emails. There are ways that you can hopefully get them to respond to emails, but it's really not something that you should bet on. And I've heard of people cold emailing professors, like 200 plus professors, and then getting a response. So really, your odds with cold emailing is not that great. Next slide. Another very common advice that people give is that you should keep up a good CGPA and professors will ask you to work for them. Next slide. However, nobody cares about your CGPA. No one has ever asked me for my CGPA, and I have a good CGPA. So this is not, I'm not saying this just, because I have a bad CGPA and this hasn't impeded me. I have a great CGPA and nobody asks for it. Nobody cares about what your CGPA is. If anything, they might use it as a qualifier, but really don't let that hold you back. Next slide. And the last one is that getting a research internship is a meritocracy. So you have to be the best person for the job, and then you'll get the research internships. It's as simple as that. Next slide. You will soon learn, however, that nothing is a meritocracy. So you may be the best person for the job and you still might not get it. And that's just how life works. But on the flip side, you may as well apply for every single opportunity then. Since you're never going to be the best person for the job, or even if you are, you may not get it. So you might as well apply for everything. Next slide. So now I'm going to give you my specific advice, and hopefully it's a lot more nuanced, but let me know if this works out for you. Next slide. So what I think you should do is that you should approach professors you know in comments and talk to them about research. Talk to them about the domain that you are interested in doing research in and ask them to refer you to a researcher that they know. Next slide. The reason why I say this is that you are only as good as your advisor. Trust me, the most internally motivated, smartest student cannot do as well as a decent student with a good advisor. If you cold email people, you might fall in with professors who do bad research, and that is unfortunately pretty common. And no professor that you know will knowingly recommend you to someone who they think does bad research. And additionally, cold emails have a horrible, success rate. It can be pretty demoralizing. This, however, has a much higher success rate. And additionally, since you're building connections in your own network and network of people who are invested in your doing well, then you will probably also do better than a random person who is suddenly invested in your doing well. Another thing is that you can also ask your seniors to recommend professors for you to work with and refer you if they can. Next slide. And so a lot of people, when they hear this, are very perplexed because how do you even get to know a professor? How do you just randomly go up and talk to professors? That's not something that we're trained to think is even something that we're allowed to do. So in general, I would say try to talk to them outside class about anything. So you can talk to them about the course that they're teaching. You can talk to them about their topic of research. I think most people in Cummins are PhDs, or they have some level of research experience. So talk to them about their research. Talk to them about what you want to do in the future as well. Ask them about their opinions on these things. Ask if they're working on any projects, if you can get involved in them, or if you have an interesting idea that you want to explore, talk to them about it. They have been in academia and in research for a lot longer time than you, and most of them are incredibly helpful. So talk to them. And you should be polite and kind and respectful. Don't talk to them with the solitary aim of getting something out of it. Just talk to them, just very generally. Build up a relationship with teachers that you like. Don't expect anything out of it. And ultimately, even if you do want to think like that, then you might end up needing letters of recommendation from them in the future. And if you speak to them, outside class, then they will remember you a lot more, and they can write more about you than just she came to class and she did well in it, as is evidenced by her grades. And there's a lot of literature on DWICLORs, and I won't go into it, but they ultimately count for nothing. So really, if anything, your takeaway from this talk should be talk to your professors. Next slide. Now, a lot of people, when they hear this cold email advice that, you should cold email professors, they're dying to get students involved in research, then, next slide. It sounds like very compelling advice, right? It sounds like you actually have a chance and you might be able to get someone to, have a shot and trust you and give you a chance. So, and that through the email, they'll see how dedicated of a student you are. So you might actually try cold emailing people. And I don't blame you. My first internship I did get through cold emailing. So, next slide. I'm going to give you advice on cold emailing then. The first thing is that you shouldn't be sending out your CV and your CGPA and asking whether you should contribute, because nobody will respond. The amount of effort that you put into that email is directly proportionate to the chance that you have getting a response back. So if you make a very generic email template, attach your CV and CGPA and send it up, nobody is going to respond to you. However, so instead what you should do is you should spend time on the email, read their website, read their papers. If you're interested in research, you should be able to read research papers. At least, it's okay if you don't understand everything, but you should at least try. If you don't understand everything, that's great. You should email them with some questions. You can even email them saying, I want to learn more about this topic. Where can I learn more about this? Do you have any resources? And they might respond to you. Or you can also email them with a specific related problem of research that you would like to work on. Once you have talked to a professor, try to ask about the specifics of the work you're doing, the research problem that you're going to be working on, maybe a few weeks in after building up more domain knowledge, and establish what you expect clearly, unless you want to spend 2 months doing nothing. But also be reasonable, because you are a student and it's going to take you a lot of time to do stuff. And ultimately, as I said before, be prepared to send out a lot of emails if you try to, follow this advice. 200 is genuinely not uncommon a number, and be prepared to be rejected a lot. And it can sound like it's nothing, but it can really be quite demoralizing as well. Next slide. So, research internships. A lot of the IITs have research programs that you can apply to. You should look online at the program web pages. A lot of the applications begin in January, and I think the deadlines are done by now. But you can still go look. The IISCs also have a bunch of summer programs, and some of these applications end in November. So try to stay on top of things. These are the words that are highlighted in blue are clickable. They're links. So go to the PPT on my website and click it through that. Ultimately, good luck with these research programs and applying to them. Next slide. Now, after applying, next. So, hurrah, you got in. What do you do now? Well, if you get in early, try to ask that you start working as soon as possible. So spend time before the internship to build up domain knowledge so that you can spend time on site doing real work. And this is something that I actually did do for all my internships. So during when I was at IIT Patna, I spent quite a few months, I think 3 months in Pune, working remotely, building up domain knowledge. And then I spent another 2.5 months in IIT Patna doing work there, where I didn't need to, learn as much, and I could, maybe contribute some original ideas as well. Once you're there, try to fight for good work if necessary. If you're unhappy with the situation, or if you're unhappy with the problem that you're working on, ask for a change, be communicative. Of course, have this be grounded in reality because, again, you are a student, you do know incredibly little. So try to be open to learning as much as you possibly can. And the quality of research that you do really is a function of the time you put in. So if you find a professor who is really good and who's giving you time and an opportunity where you really can do good and if not great work, realize that that is incredibly rare and lucky, and you should give it everything that you have. Spend all your time doing that work. Next slide. And a common question that I get is, do I need to publish papers? So how common it is for for an undergrad to publish can vary a lot from field to field. It's a lot less common in systems and it's much more common in machine learning. And there are a lot of different variables that can come into getting work published, and a majority of them will not be in your control. So instead of worrying about, can I get this published? Can I not get this published? Focus on the work that you're doing. If the quality of work is good, you may publish a paper, and that's really all you should concentrate on. The reason why it is less common for undergrads to publish in systems like systems is fields like compilers and programming languages, and it's much more common in machine learning, is that the turnaround time for projects is much longer in systems. So it can take a year and a half to publish a paper in systems, versus in machine learning, it can take around 3 months, and that's totally fine. Next slide. So the other thing is that what if I don't get an internship? I still want to do research, so what do I do? Well, firstly, getting someone to give you a chance is really hard. And I think I've gotten fairly lucky with the research internships, but I also have not gotten a lot of research internships than I have. So keep trying and know that everyone goes through this disappointment. So you aren't stupid or you aren't, foolish for trying to do research. It's good that you're trying. Next slide. If nothing else, you should pick up a topic that you want to explore, that you want to do research in, and do an independent project. In programming languages and compilers, this is really easy because not easy in the sense of these projects are easy, but you can pick up projects really well. So you can do things like building your own compiler. You can design and implement your own programming languages. And there are a bunch of resources online that can help you do this. Essentially, what you should do is externalize your resilience as an answer to all your horrible luck. And plus, you can add it in your CV as, you did an independent project that summer. Or you can also, try to talk to professors in college about some project that you want to do. Try to ask them, if they're willing, try to ask them questions about it, etc. And in the meantime, it might also be worthwhile thinking about what you can improve on in your search process, so that the next time maybe you can get better results. Next slide. So my experience briefly. Next. So the first thing is just to talk about the amount of privilege that I have. So a lot of research internships aren't paid, and currently, well, it's COVID, so my IIT Bombay internship as well as the BTech project work that we've been doing has all been done remotely. So I haven't have to worry about living expenses and traveling. But in my IIT Patna internship, I did have to bear the brunt of traveling and living expenses. And I'm incredibly lucky to have parents who have the financial ability to support me through this. Additionally, deciding to pursue research beyond a research internship is also a really big privilege. I don't need to provide for anyone, so I can essentially make decisions that will only pay off in later years, hopefully. And also, there is something to be said that my parents do support and encourage my decisions, even though nobody expected me to go into research. It's not something that anyone would have thought of that I would do. So that can be rare, very unfortunately. So I do have all this privilege backing up the decisions that I've taken. Next slide. Additionally, being from a program that is disconnected from research can be a bit isolating. So I'm the only person in my year who's moving forward with research in computer science, at least that I know of right now, after undergrad. And it can be quite isolating because you can't really talk about research with anybody. You can't talk about flow and context sensitive interprocedural analysis with anyone because no one even knows what it is or thinks that it's interesting. And most of the research that I've talked, most of my conversations about research occur with professors. So if you're in a similar situation, Twitter is a really, really great place where you can find a lot of interesting conversations happening about research. And it's a great place to find a research community as well. Next slide. So why do I do it? It's a lot of fun. Ultimately, I really, really love learning. I've always loved learning. And it fills me with a lot of joy to learn and think about research problems and think about it really deeply, which is why I love it so much. And I think that it's this fun. And if you're like me, you might find it to be as fulfilling as I do. Next slide. Yes, some very general resources. And I mentioned Twitter before. You should also join Reddit, and there are a bunch of general subreddits that are interesting, like grad admissions, where they talk about grad school admissions, and domain-specific subreddits like programming languages, machine learning, etc. You should also try to build up relationships with upperclassmen, so with seniors, and talk to them. Join a technical club. That's a great place to meet seniors and meet like-minded people. If you are scared of talking to people or in general are a bit shy, this is advice that's very good for in person when student panel would do a lot of events. So but still, student panel is great for getting over a fear of talking to people. So if you're in first and second year and you get a chance to, do something with student panel later, go for it, especially if you have fear of talking to people. Next slide. And I think the most important thing is that you should learn how to judge the advice that is given to you. When people give you advice, think about bias because often they are not thinking about bias. Question about the specifics of the work that they did. So what did you learn? What would you have done differently? What was the best part of your experience? What is the worst part of your experience, etc. It's fine if someone is uncomfortable telling you a particular thing. That is up to them. But try to do your due diligence in judging the advice that is given to you. And ultimately, understand that if someone gives you a formula, like just do XYZ and you will get this, or if they make it seem like it's incredibly easy, you are 100% not getting the entire story. Life is very rarely that easy, especially good work. So try to judge the advice that is given to you so that you can take it for what it is instead of what it's being sold as. Next slide. So yes, that is all about research internships. So I have a website that's linked there. You can read more about the specific research that I do over there. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And if you want to write me an email, you can write me an email at that email address. Does anyone have any questions? They can ask anything. You can ask anything you want.
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, Michelle. Yeah, so I'm not from your college. I'm
Okay.
from Christ. Yeah. So my question is, I am actually pursuing research in computational archaeology. Okay.
Okay.
So I am currently in the third year of BSc Computer Science,
Hmm.
and then I'm planning to move forward doing my MSc. Well, I can't find dual course in which I could actually do archaeology in computational science, especially in India. That's kind of an impossible thing right now.
Hmm.
So, my research basically is kind of, including the epic that we have, the Ramayana and Mahabharata
Hmm.
kind of thing. Yeah. So the whole food trail and all of that. So I've visited places, and I've had those papers on the base of archaeology. But then when I see the tools that have come up,
Hmm.
and then there's this language, we have our language Sanskrit, right?
Hmm.
So people are coming up with AI, and they're thinking of maybe, in NLP they could use Sanskrit as a language because it's kind of formatted, it's formal, it's more specific language out there because you don't have two meanings for a particular word, right? So it could be easier to use it. So when I'm looking through Sanskrit, did you know any, well, can you advise how to reach to such people, because the field that I'm really looking towards is very different, because either I find people who are legit doing MA, in
Hmm.
archaeology, or I find people who are legit into science, computer science. So
Hmm.
there aren't really mixtures of
So
where,
I'm assuming that since you're doing research in this,
yeah,
you are looking at papers in this field.
I
Yes.
am. That is what that's the only way I'm actually doing it through, because
Yeah. So the best thing to do is either to reach out to the people who've written those papers, or then check if they are on Twitter, because a lot of academics like Twitter, and go and follow them, follow the people that they're following, and sort of try to build a network like that. So that's really the thing that would work the best.
because I did try emailing two or three of them, and then yeah, one of them responded as well. But then, you just get to know, okay, they're not very keen about what you're really talking about. So you just don't know if you should just be shameless and keep spamming with them with your mails, or just stop.
Yeah, cold emailing is not something.
Something that really works all the time.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay. And the other question, because you're searching in compilers and all of that.
Hmm.
So, um, coming to Sanskrit, well, I have a project that I have to make, build a compiler for myself because I'm in third year and I'm supposed to be doing that.
Hmm.
So, coming from different perspective, because now that we're using the lexicon analysis that you do in the beginning, so
Hmm.
usme, um, when you use Sanskrit, I'm not sure if have you, looked
No,
at.
I don't know anything about Sanskrit.
Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, then that wouldn't be a question. So, do you know any professor? Maybe how did you reach out to professors? Like simply from your college?
Yeah, from my college, essentially, I have. There are great professors who do research in programming languages and compilers in Cummins. Um, so yeah, that was that for
Yeah,
me.
I'll probably personally mail you, and then can you
Yeah,
share me
sure.
those email IDs so then I can, probably talk to them, because I am not sure if I have really good professors in my college.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wasn't serious when I was pursuing, then it just kind of, rolled up later on.
Yep. Sure, sure. Email me and I'll see what I can do.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Vaishnavi, you start from where and when did you start with research?
Yes,
I started with.
actually,
Hmm,
he,
go ahead.
I had a lecture in my college, so I joined this meet now. So I missed out everything. I didn't listen to the recorded session.
Okay, the
But
recording will be posted somewhere. I think Aditri, where will it
Yeah,
be
the
posted on
recording,
YouTube?
yeah, it'll be posted on YouTube and we'll be sharing the link.
okay,
Yeah.
I will watch. But I'm currently learning quantum computing. It is an
Hmm.
online course. So do you know anyone, any professor of a college who is doing research in that field or somewhere nearby
In
our college?
quantum computing, I don't think there's anyone in Cummins who's doing, because
Maybe
the reason why I'm
someone
saying this is
in
that
any of
no,
people
I
you
don't know
know.
anyone. No. I
Okay,
have a
then.
friend who is interested in quantum computing, and she's like going to do a master's in quantum computing. So I don't really
Okay.
know anything about the field. But if you're interested in it, you should continue.
Which field did you do research?
Sorry? Hello? Yeah, if you're interested in quantum computing, you should like continue learning about it, doing courses on it, trying to
Yes.
um,
Yes.
trying to learn more about it.
In fact, there is a course provided by the coding school. It's sponsored by
Yeah,
IBM.
sure. I will.
So uh, they
Yes, yes.
the
I'm doing
person
that
has,
only.
yeah. So
Qubit by
you can
qubit
reach
wala.
out. Yeah, you can reach out to the professors that teach the course.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Yes, but they
Uh,
are out of India.
Hello.
yes, Shreya.
Hi, Michelle. It was a great session today. And I wanted to ask about the ISER Institutes. How, as an undergraduate, we can be a part of it.
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
About the ISER Institutes, like we have ISER Pune. So, externally, I'm a first year student. So, how can I join or start with research over there?
So generally, as an undergraduate, you're always going to be working with a professor, right? So I would say it's the same idea that you find research that you want to be doing, topics that you want to be doing research in. If that's at ISER, if that's something to do with physics or something, then that's great. Try to talk to professors that whether that is in your own college or whether that's just professors that you've come across on the internet. That's also fine. Try to talk to them about it. If they're at ISA, they might invite you to come and do an internship with them. So yeah, that's generally how you would try to get to work. But don't think about research with don't try to think about research as this idea of working with a particular institute. Just think about it in terms of topics and work that you want to be doing rather than institute, because institute really does not matter as much as the work that you're going to be doing.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Vaishnavi, that would be me. My name is Aditri. You can reach out via email and I'll let you know more about it.
Can you put your email in the chat box?
Sure. So I think we're done with the questions.
Yes, seems so. Hopefully everyone
Okay.
has liked the talk. Feel free to reach out with any, any suggestions that you have about the talk. That would be great. Thank you,
So thank you so
everyone.
much, Michelle, for this amazing talk. It was very educational, and I'm sure this will go a long way for all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.